All right. So are you ready to like really just dive deep into something interesting?
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're going to be tackling Mel Robbins's let them theory
Oh, yeah.
from her book, Let Them, plus Let Me New.
Oh.
Have you ever felt like you're like constantly trying to control things that are totally out of your hands?
Mm-hmm.
Like other people's actions or like even their thoughts?
Yeah.
That's exactly what this theory is all about.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how we, as humans,
Right.
we like try to control what we can't.
Yeah.
And Mel Robbins points out how this actually drains our energy and holds us back in so many areas of our lives.
I know, and it really does, like, it affects so many things.
Mhm.
Robbins uses this great example about her son's high school prom. Like, imagine
Oh, yeah.
the chaos, no dinner reservation, pouring rain, and a bunch of teenagers about to eat tacos in a tiny...
Well, those are just a universal stressor for parents.
They are. And her first instinct was to fix it all.
Yeah.
Find a reservation, order pizza, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
But this frantic need to control
Mm-hmm.
actually just made her more stressed.
Oh, I bet.
And I think we've all been there, right?
Absolutely.
Trying to control things that we just can't.
It's like that old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Right.
We can't control other people's choices
Right.
or actions, and the more we try, the more frustrated and anxious we become.
So true. Mel Robbins has this great analogy in the book where she compares it to a seesaw.
I love that one.
Yeah, so the more we try to control others,
Mm.
the more our emotional state kind of goes down.
It's so true, and it's so visual.
Yeah,
And it's actually backed up by a lot of research in psychology,
right.
that this idea of the locus of control,
Oh, yeah.
it shows us that people who focus on what they can control are generally happier and more resilient.
So let them becomes the tool
Mm-hmm.
to kind of shift that locus of control inward toward what we can influence.
Exactly.
But I think it's important to clarify, letting go doesn't mean we're giving up, right?
Right. It's not about being passive or letting people walk all over us. Mel Robbins makes that very clear. It's more about a balance.
Yeah.
That's where the let me part of the equation comes in.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So it's about taking responsibility for our own happiness and actions while acknowledging that we can't control others.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about empowerment. She uses another example in her book, a story about a girls' weekend trip that she wasn't invited to.
Uh-huh.
Initially, she was hurt and confused,
Yeah.
trying to figure out like what she did wrong.
I can relate to that feeling of being left out. It's never fun.
It's a really common experience, but then Mel Robbins had this realization, this let them moment. It wasn't about her. It was about her friends making choices that were right for them.
Yeah.
And that opened up space for let me.
So instead of dwelling on the situation, she could focus on her own social life and create the experiences that she desired.
Yes, letting go of that need to control the situation gave her the freedom to focus on herself and what she wanted. And this concept, the shift in thinking, it doesn't just apply to personal relationships. It can be incredibly useful in dealing with stress, especially at work.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about it. We've all dealt with annoying coworkers, demanding bosses, those frustrating office politics things that can really get under our skin.
We can't control our coworkers or our boss's decisions,
Right.
but we can control our reactions.
Well, let's say you're working hard
Okay.
and you deserve a promotion,
Yes, you do.
but your boss seems totally oblivious.
Mm-hmm.
How can the let them theory help us in a situation like that?
I think that the old you might have gotten resentful, maybe
Yeah.
tried to force the issue, but
Mhm.
let them offers a different approach. Let them do their thing. You can't change them.
So let them be clueless about your well-deserved promotion.
Yeah.
And let me focus on what I can control.
Right.
My job, search my skills, my network. It's about focusing your energy on what you can influence.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about recognizing where your energy is best spent. And this is especially true when it comes to something that can be a real energy drain,
Yeah.
other people's opinions.
Ugh, this is a big one, right?
It is.
It's so easy to get caught up in what other people think, to worry about pleasing everyone.
I know.
In the book, Mel Robbins talks about being hesitant to even post about her business online because she was afraid of what her friends would think.
Oh, that's so relatable.
Isn't it?
We all care about what people think, even if we say we don't.
Totally. But here's the thing.
Yeah,
People will judge.
they will.
It's just human nature.
Yeah.
We can't stop it,
Right.
but we can control how much we let it affect us.
So true. The let them theory is incredibly liberating in this context.
I agree.
Let them judge. You can't change their minds, but you can control your own actions, your own choices.
Right.
And that leads us to an area where this theory can be really powerful and insightful.
Okay.
Family dynamics.
Oh, family dynamics.
Oh, boy.
Definitely a whole other level of complexity. We're talking long-held expectations,
Yeah.
emotional baggage, the whole works. Mel Robbins even acknowledges how charged these relationships can be. She uses the example of blended families and the unique challenges they face.
It's important to remember that families operate as a system.
Mhm.
Each member plays a role, and any change,
Yeah,
like a new step-parent or step-sibling,
right.
can disrupt the whole system.
Right.
This can lead to reactions that might seem personal,
Yeah.
but are often just the system trying to rebalance.
So the let them theory encourages understanding,
It does.
letting stepchildren grieve, letting things unfold naturally instead of trying to force a specific outcome. It's about recognizing that everyone is adjusting and reacting in their own way.
This requires a lot of maturity
Yes.
and a willingness to see things from different perspectives.
Right.
Mel Robbins introduces this concept from Lisa Bilyeu called frame of reference.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that we're all right from our own perspective.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We all have our own unique experiences and beliefs that shape how we see the world, and those differences can definitely lead to clashes, especially within families.
It doesn't mean we have to agree with everyone's perspective, but it does encourage us to try to understand where they're coming from.
Right. And she gives a great example of her own mom initially disliking her husband,
Oh, really?
who she now adores.
Oh, wow.
It's a great illustration of how frame of reference can shift our perspective. Mel Robbins realized her mom wasn't judging her husband, but was actually afraid of losing her daughter.
That makes sense.
Once she understood her mom's frame of reference, the entire dynamic changed.
Interesting.
So it wasn't about agreeing, it was about empathy and understanding.
I see.
That shift in perspective can make a world of difference in those emotionally charged family situations. But sometimes it's not just about differing perspectives. We're dealing with something Mel Robbins calls adult childlike behavior.
Oh, yeah.
Those moments when grown-ups throw tantrums just like kids.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
We've all encountered it.
Mm-hmm.
The silent treatment, passive-aggressive comments, guilt trips, all these ways adults try to manipulate or control others through their emotions.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting to deal with.
So how does the let them theory apply to these situations where we're dealing with someone who's acting emotionally immature? Is it about just letting them get away with it?
Not at all.
Okay.
It's not about excusing bad behavior. It's about recognizing that emotional maturity is a skill and not everyone has mastered it. And just like we can't force someone to learn a new language overnight,
Right.
we can't force someone to become emotionally mature overnight.
So in those moments,
Yeah.
let them have their tantrum, let them express their emotions, but don't let their behavior control your own emotional state.
Exactly. Mel Robbins delves into the science behind emotions, explaining that they're like chemical bursts that last about 90 seconds if we don't react.
Oh, wow.
We can't control the feeling itself,
Okay.
but we can control how we respond.
She shares this story about her own daughter struggling with anxiety and how she inadvertently enabled that anxiety by trying to rescue her. She let her daughter sleep on her floor for months, thinking she was being kind.
Oh, wow.
And it turned out her daughter's anxiety actually got worse
I bet.
because she was avoiding facing her fears.
Right. It wasn't until they started working with a therapist that they realized the importance of letting her experience the natural consequences of her actions, even if it was uncomfortable.
It's about supporting, not rescuing.
Yeah.
It's about letting people learn and grow from their experiences, even if it means watching them struggle a bit.
And that can be one of the hardest things for a parent or anyone who loves someone to do.
Right.
But ultimately, it's about allowing them to develop their own resilience and coping mechanisms.
It's about giving them the space to figure things out for themselves.
Yes.
And that brings us to another universal struggle. Comparison.
Oh, yeah.
We all do it, but it can be so toxic.
It really can. Mel Robbins even admits to being a recovering comparison queen herself.
Oh, wow.
She breaks it down into two types of comparison. Comparing ourselves to things we can't change,
Right,
which
yeah.
is pure self-torture, and comparing ourselves to things we can change, which can actually be motivating.
She gives this really relatable example of her daughter constantly comparing herself to her sister, focusing on her sister's talents and her different body type.
It's like focusing on someone else's hand in a card game. You
What?
can't change the cards they were dealt, but you can play your own hand strategically.
And all that comparison was causing her daughter so much unnecessary misery.
I'm sure.
It was blinding her to her own unique gifts and strengths.
But then Mel Robbins offers this other example about her own experience with jealousy.
Okay.
She was envious of a friend's amazing home renovation.
Oh, yeah.
But instead of wallowing in envy, it motivated her to get to work on her own goals.
Right.
It was a wake-up call.
So sometimes comparison can be a powerful motivator
It can.
if we focus on what we can change, right?
Exactly. And here's the key takeaway. That feeling of envy or jealousy often reveals what we're avoiding doing ourselves. That person or situation that's irritating us might actually be our biggest teacher,
Okay.
showing us what's possible if we're willing to put in the effort.
It's like they're holding up a mirror reflecting back to us our own unrealized potential.
Precisely.
Wow. And as we move through life, our relationships evolve.
Yeah.
And sometimes we feel that sting of being left out.
Right.
It can be especially tough as adults when friendships change and we're not physically together all the time, like we were in school.
Mel Robbins calls this the great scattering.
I love that.
We graduate, we move, we start families. Our lives take different paths.
Yeah.
Our schedules change, our energy shifts, and sometimes friendships naturally fade.
Mel Robbins explains that proximity is a key factor in early friendships.
It is.
As adults, we scatter,
Yeah,
and it takes more effort to maintain those connections.
it does.
She even shares this really vulnerable story about feeling excluded from a friend group after moving to a new town.
Oh, I can imagine how painful that must have been. But looking back, she realized that her own negative energy and bitterness played a role in the dynamic.
Oh, wow.
She admitted that she probably wouldn't have wanted to be around herself either at that time.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have a part to play in our relationships. Our energy and attitude can impact the people around us sometimes in ways we don't even realize.
Absolutely. And then there's the challenge of making new friends as adults, which can feel even more daunting.
Right.
Mel Robbins talks about feeling really lonely in that new town until she made a conscious shift.
So what did she do? How did she overcome that feeling of isolation?
She decided to be proactive.
Yeah.
She adopted what she calls a going first approach, knocking on her neighbor's door, striking up conversations at the coffee shop, putting herself out there even when it felt awkward.
It sounds like it took a lot of courage to put herself out there like that.
It did. But by going first, by taking that initiative, she was able to build a wonderful community for herself.
That's a great reminder that we don't have to wait for invitations or perfect circumstances to build connections.
Right.
Sometimes we have to create those opportunities ourselves.
Exactly. And speaking of putting ourselves out there, that leads us to the realm of love and relationships, an area where the let them theory can be both challenging and incredibly liberating.
Oh, absolutely. The dating world can feel like a minefield sometimes, especially with all the added complexities of apps and social media.
It can. Mel Robbins doesn't sugarcoat it. She talks about the importance of bravery in dating,
Yeah.
being ourselves even when it feels risky, recognizing when someone's not interested,
Yeah.
and not making excuses for bad behavior.
It's about setting standards and not settling for anything less than what we deserve. She really emphasizes the importance of choosing, not chasing.
Right. Is this person adding to my life, or am I trying to fill a void with them?
That's such a great question to ask ourselves.
Yeah.
Are we choosing a partner who truly complements our lives, or are we trying to fix something within ourselves?
It's about being honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
And recognizing what we truly want and need in a relationship.
And sometimes, even with the best intentions we have, to face the heartache of knowing when to walk away. Mel Robbins talks about how sometimes even good people are just not the right fit for us.
That's when she introduces this fascinating research from the Gottman Institute.
Yeah.
They found that a whopping 69% of relationship problems are actually not resolvable.
Wow. 69%. That's a pretty significant number.
It is, and it highlights the importance of accepting that we can't force change in others.
Right.
We can only choose how we respond, and sometimes the most loving choice is to let them be who they are and let ourselves move on to a relationship that aligns with our needs and values.
It's not always easy to walk away, but sometimes it's the path to greater happiness.
Absolutely. And speaking of happiness, it's important to remember that the most important relationship we have is the one with ourselves.
That's a great point to transition to the next part of our discussion. Mel Robbins dedicates a significant portion of her book to self-love and how it's the foundation for all our other relationships.
It is. It's about recognizing our own worth, setting boundaries, and honoring our own needs.
So are you ready to dive deeper into the let me part of the equation and explore how this theory can empower us to create a more fulfilling life?
I am. Let's do it. I think the whole let me be me part
Yeah.
It's so powerful. It's not about selfishness. It's about claiming the power to create the life we want.
And that ties directly back to control.
Yes.
When we're fixated on controlling others, we give them power over our own happiness. But letting go allows us to step into who we're meant to be.
Exactly.
It's like finding solid ground after being on that wobbly seesaw of trying to control everyone else. And this applies to everything.
Everything.
Work relationships, even our own creativity.
I know.
Think about how much energy we waste trying to fit in, meet others' expectations. Mel Robbins argues that this can lead us to live someone else's life, not our own.
It's true.
So let me becomes about giving ourselves permission
Yeah.
to dream,
Okay.
to take risks, to maybe even disappoint others if it means pursuing what truly matters to us.
It's not always easy.
Right.
Mel Robbins is honest about that. She talks about setting boundaries, learning to say no,
Yeah.
even to people we love if it means honoring our own needs.
That can be really tough, especially when we're so used to putting others first.
It is.
She has this really thought-provoking question in the book. If I knew the love of my life was around the corner, how would I spend my time today?
Ooh, I like that.
It's about living with intention, not waiting for permission to be ourselves.
That's a question everyone should ask themselves.
Isn't it?
It really gets to the heart of what we're prioritizing.
Totally. And sometimes the let them theory applies to situations that are truly heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like when someone we love is struggling with addiction or mental health challenges.
These are tough topics, and Mel Robbins tackles them head on.
She does.
It's so important to remember.
Yeah.
You can't force someone to get better no matter how much you care.
She's very upfront about that. In fact, she talks about how our attempts to help can sometimes enable the very behavior we're trying to change. She calls it the rescue trap.
The rescue trap. Yeah, it's that urge to jump in and fix things to protect our loved ones from pain.
Yeah.
But it can end up shielding them from the consequences of their actions, which are often necessary for growth.
She uses this really powerful example from her own life.
Okay.
Her daughter's anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
She was waking up every night, terrified to sleep alone. So Mel Robbins' instinct, as any loving parents would be, was to comfort her daughter. She let her sleep on the floor of her room, thinking it was the kindest thing to do, but it backfired.
No.
The anxiety got worse because her daughter was learning to avoid her fears instead of facing them.
That's the danger of the rescue trap.
Yeah.
It teaches the wrong lesson. It wasn't until Mel Robbins started working with a therapist that she realized the importance of letting her daughter experience those natural consequences, even if it was hard to watch.
It's a huge takeaway for anyone dealing with a loved one's struggles. It's about supporting, not rescuing, allowing them to learn and grow through their own experiences, even when it's painful to witness.
Mel Robbins is honest about how difficult this can be, especially when addiction or mental health is involved. She shares a raw story about her husband, Chris, hitting rock bottom with his restaurant business.
He was in serious debt, and his brother refused to loan him money, which felt really harsh at the time.
Yeah, but it turned out to be the wake-up call Chris needed.
Yeah.
That moment of hitting rock bottom often forces us to take responsibility for ourselves when no one else will rescue us.
That makes sense. Sometimes the toughest love is the kind that forces us to confront our own choices and find our own way out. But what about those situations where it's not about rescuing, but about simply supporting someone through a difficult time?
I think we all want to show up for our loved ones
Yeah.
when they're going through something challenging. Mel Robbins talks about the importance of providing practical support. Without taking over, she uses the example of her own postpartum experience.
Oh, wow.
She struggled with severe depression after a difficult birth
Oh, no.
and felt completely overwhelmed.
What helped her the most?
Not advice, not people trying to fix things,
Yeah.
but simple acts of support. Her cousin cleaned her house, her parents came to stay, her friends took her out even though she felt like a zombie.
Just being there.
Yeah.
Without judgment or the need to fix everything.
Yeah.
It's about holding space for someone's pain.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's that quiet, consistent support that can make all the difference. It allows the person to feel seen and loved without feeling pressured to get better on anyone else's timeline.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most helpful thing we can do is just be present and listen. So we've talked about letting go in relationships with others, even in really challenging situations.
Yeah.
But what about letting go when it comes to ourselves? How can we use the let them theory to cultivate a healthier relationship with ourselves?
That's where it gets really interesting. Remember that closing message?
Yeah.
Let them be them so you can finally let me be me.
It's about claiming the power to create the life we want without waiting for permission.
Exactly.
But how do we actually put that into practice?
It starts with that internal shift,
Right?
that conscious decision to stop giving our power away to other people's opinions, expectations, or even their emotional outbursts.
So remembering that we can't control how others react,
Exactly.
but we can control our own response.
Exactly. It's about taking a deep breath and saying, let them have their opinions, let them make their choices, let them experience the consequences of their actions.
And then focusing on that empowering phrase,
Yes. Let me set boundaries. Let me pursue my passions. Let me speak my truth. Let me create a life that feels authentic and joyful, even if it looks different from what others expect.
It's about stepping off that seesaw of trying to control everyone else.
Yes.
And finding our own solid ground.
Mel Robbins encourages us to ask ourselves a powerful question.
Okay.
What would I do if I knew I couldn't fail?
Ooh.
It's so powerful because it removes the fear of judgment or making the wrong choice.
Right.
It encourages us to dream big and to really tap into our passions and desires without that inner critic holding us back.
It can be scary to listen to that inner voice, especially if it's telling us to do something that goes against the grain or might disappoint others.
It can be, but Mel Robbins assures us that there will be setbacks and challenges along the way.
Right.
It's a process, and it's okay to stumble. The key is to keep practicing, to keep coming back to those two powerful phrases, let them and let me.
They're not just words. They're like a way of life.
They are.
A way of approaching our relationships with others and with ourselves.
And it's not about being selfish or isolating ourselves.
Right.
It's about creating healthy, balanced relationships where everyone has the freedom to be who they are.
It's about letting go of the need to control, to fix, to please. And instead focusing on creating a life that aligns with our values and our truest selves.
And that ripple effect we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It happens naturally when we embrace this philosophy.
Right.
We become models for healthy relationships, for self-love, for embracing authenticity and imperfection.
And that's a beautiful thing.
It is.
It's about more than just changing our own lives. It's about contributing to a world where everyone feels empowered to do the same.
Absolutely. And what I really appreciate about Mel Robbins' approach is that she doesn't just present abstract concepts.
Right.
She offers practical tools and exercises that we can all use.
She provides specific prompts, even scripts for difficult conversations.
I know.
Whether we're talking to ourselves or to others.
She doesn't shy away from the messy parts of life.
Right.
These moments of heartbreak, frustration, and self-doubt, she meets us right where we are.
Yeah.
And provides a path forward.
What does this mean for you, our listener? What's one area of your life where saying let them and let me could bring more peace, more joy, more freedom, or maybe just a little more breathing room?
We encourage you to pick up Mel Robbins' book, Let Them, plus Let Me. It might just be the permission slip you've been waiting for to step into your own Let Me Be Me era.
The truth is, you deserve that kind of freedom. You deserve to live a life that feels authentic and joyful, and the power to create that life is already within you.
You just have to say yes to it. Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of everyone else's expectations and needs that we forget about our own.
It's true. I know, I've been there.
It's a common trap. And honestly, one of the biggest hurdles to living a truly authentic life, and this is precisely where that let me be me comes in, it's not enough to simply acknowledge the need to prioritize ourselves.
Right.
We have to actually put it into practice.
It's almost like giving ourselves permission to be who we truly are without apology.
Exactly. And that often means taking concrete steps, even if they feel a bit scary or uncomfortable.
Right.
Remember that seesaw analogy?
Yeah.
Mel Robbins talks about how we're constantly going up and down, trying to control the other side, never finding our balance. But when we step off the seesaw, we find solid ground. It's like we're finally standing on our own 2 feet.
That's where the real transformation happens.
Yeah, it is.
Stepping into that let me be me era is about taking ownership of our lives, our choices, and our happiness.
I love that. It's about reclaiming our own power and agency.
She asked this great question in the book. What would I do if I knew I couldn't fail?
Ooh.
It's so powerful because it removes the fear of judgment or making the wrong choice.
I know.
It encourages us to dream big and to really tap into our passions and desires without that inner critic holding us back.
And it's not just about dreaming, it's about taking action.
Mm.
Mel Robbins emphasizes setting boundaries, honoring our own needs, and not being afraid to say no, even when it's difficult.
Learning to say no is a skill in itself,
It is.
especially for people pleasers like me.
It really is.
Yeah.
And she doesn't shy away from acknowledging that this process won't always be easy.
Right.
We're going to stumble, we have moments of doubt, but she reminds us that it's a continuous practice.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Mel Robbins uses this great analogy of the sky.
Right?
It's constantly changing with storms and clouds and sunshine. We can't control the weather patterns,
Right.
but we can choose how we respond to them.
And the cost of not letting go is enormous.
It is.
We drain our energy, create unnecessary suffering, and miss out on incredible opportunities.
On the other hand, the rewards of letting go are just as powerful.
Yeah.
We experience more peace, more joy, more freedom to create the life we desire.
And that ripple effect we've been talking about.
Yes.
When we learn to embrace let them and let me, we become models for healthy relationships and inspire others to do the same.
It's about contributing to a more compassionate, accepting, and loving world.
Yeah.
But it all starts with taking that first step,
Right.
that courageous act of choosing ourselves.
So to wrap things up, what would you say to someone who's feeling overwhelmed by the idea of putting all of this into practice?
I would remind them that they don't have to do it all at once.
Right.
Start small.
Yeah.
Choose one area of your life where you feel like you're giving your power away,
Right.
and experiment with the let them theory.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you release that need to control?
Yeah.
What possibilities open up when you give yourself permission to prioritize your own needs and desires?
That's great advice.
Mm.
It's about taking those baby steps and celebrating those small victories along the way.
It is.
And remember, Mel Robbins provides those practical tools and exercises in her book
She does.
to help you apply these concepts to your own life.
Mm.
It's like having a personal coach guiding you every step of the way.
It truly is. And as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
we want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
What if choosing yourself is not selfish?
But the most generous act you can offer the world.
Mm.
When we were fully aligned with our own truth and purpose,
Yeah.
we shine brighter, we love deeper, and we inspire others to do the same.
It all begins with that simple but profound decision
And-
to let them be them so you can finally let me be me. So go out there and create the life you deserve.